I was 13 years old, and one decision I made in a single night changed the entire perspective in the way that my mother had come to see me, and most importantly, the situation changed how I saw myself. And from there, it kind of started just a downward spiral that I didn't even realize I was stepping into until it was too late. And at this point in my life, I really wasn't that bad of a kid. You know, I stayed out of trouble, I went to school, and I did pretty much everything that I was honestly supposed to do, or at least that was asked of me. But internally, things were starting to kind of shift a little bit. My relationship with my biological father was falling apart. I was starting to feel out of place at school. And for the first time, I really felt like I genuinely did not belong anywhere. And then something small happened, but at the time, it didn't feel very small to me. You see, we all know how the game works. Yeah, at some point in time, everyone at school is starting to get, like cell phones and iPods and all this other stuff. You know, they all were connected per se with each other, and I wasn't. And when you're a teenager at 13 years old, that doesn't just feel like you don't have a phone. That feels like you're being left out of the world. I had a friend who had a phone. And one day, I grew a pair, and I asked him if I could borrow it, but just for a night. I told him I'd bring it back the next day, and he hesitated, but eventually he said yes. And that night, I took the phone home with me. I hid it, waited until I was alone, and then I started texting a girl that I had a crush on. And at first, the conversation was honestly innocent. Consisted of just kind of like talking, laughing, getting to know each other. But as the night progressed, so the conversation changed along with it. And eventually it hit a point where I kind of crossed the line. And this was a line that I knew better than to cross, but I did it anyway. And then I went to sleep thinking nothing of the situation. The next morning, my mother knew something was off immediately. And sure enough, she found the phone. But she didn't just find the phone. She found the messages, everything. And I remember sitting there as she read through them to me. And in that moment, I've never felt more exposed, more ashamed, and more small as an individual. And then after all that, the punishment came. And it wasn't just a grounding. Everything was gone. You know, there was no sports. There was no extracurricular activities. There was no friends. There was no TV. There was no video games. There was no phone. For a year. For a full year, it was nothing but taking care of my responsibilities at the house and going to school. When I was not doing those two things, it was locked down in my bedroom with nothing but books and Legos to keep me company. And here's the part that people don't talk about when it comes to walking out of situations like this. That it's not just a punishment, it's what it does to you internally. And as each day walked by during this punishment, so did the shame with it. And I felt like I let everyone down, that I was letting myself down. I felt like something that was wrong with me. And the worst part, everything that did give me a connection was taken away. So instead of growing what I should have been, I was isolated, I was shut down, and I learned how to hide. And with that, you start bottling things up on the inside because you stop talking about what's really going on. And looking back now, that moment wasn't just about getting in trouble. It was the beginning of a very long-term pattern that I had in place. It was a sense of curiosity without any guidance. It was a sense of shame without understanding, and it was a sense of silence and silence instead of conversation. And when you mix all of those things together, you don't get growth. You get confusion, you get secrecy, and eventually you get damage. If you ever have made a decision that you regret, if you've ever felt ashamed of something that you did, if you've ever felt like one moment in your past and life has defined you, I really need you to hear this. That moment is not the end of your story, but it can shape it if you never deal with it. This situation and experience is just one piece of my story, and it only honestly gets deeper from here. If you want the full, unfiltered truth of everything that came after, it's all in my book. Check the link in my bio.